Renowned journalist and reporter Eddie Brock learns about the Life Foundation and loses his entire career trying to discover what accusations the foundation was subjected to. 6 difficult months later, Eddie, who is now homeless, finds Drake's horrifying secret about his unethical experiments on humans. However, in the process, he unintentionally becomes the host of a weird, amorphous, pitch black alien life form known as Venom, a potent interplanetary symbiote. Venom decided to cling to Eddie's body and change with it. However, Carlton Drake, the head of the Life Foundation, catches Eddie in trouble for this. Eddie Venom must stop Drake from planning to fully symbiote the human population to prepare them for his invading forces. Eddie now has to maintain the life of the greedy parasite, whether he likes it or not, for the megalomaniacal, which means someone who has an unnaturally strong wish for power and control, or thinks that they are much more important and powerful than they are. Drake's deadly scheme is to set to take Earth down. Can Eddie though withstand the venom inside? Let's watch that in Venom's movie recap. Welcome to Movie Spotlight. A bioengineering company, Life Foundation Probe, finds a comet coated in symbiotic life forms while searching space for new habitable worlds. 4 samples are returned to Earth, but one gets out and the ship crashes in Malaysia. One of the spaceship's astronauts is surprisingly discovered alive close to the crash site, but the search teams are unable to locate the escaping sample. The other 3 are found and taken to the Life Foundation's research facility in San Francisco. The astronaut is loaded into an ambulance and driven to the medical facility. The symbiote crashes the ambulance after taking control of the astronaut's body. The symbiote emerges from the nurse's body with an ability to heal human bodies. The symbiote discovers the Life Foundation's emblem and moves in its direction. An investigative journalist, Eddie Brock, follows people who don't want to be followed, as he puts it. Anyway, his fiancée is a lawyer working on the Life Foundation's legal defense. His boss invited Eddie to interview the CEO of the Life Foundation, Mr. Carlton Drake. Although Eddie's fiancée, Annie, is busy putting together a lawsuit defense for the Life Foundation, Eddie surreptitiously reads about Drake's human experiments in a classified document she has. When Eddie interviews Drake, he accuses him, claiming that to finance his space travel, he manages both a pharmaceutical and space empire. Drake uses money to get the weakest members of the society to volunteer for his company's drug tests, and many of them are ultimately dead, Eddie accuses. Drake replies nothing and calls off the interview. As a result, Annie and Eddie both lose their jobs, hence Annie breaks up with him. There, CEO Carlton Drake, a brilliant inventor and pioneer of the organization, decides to conduct experiments on symbiotes. The symbiote is always changing bodies, searching for meat and heading towards its goal. After completing animal testing on rabbits, Drake learns that the symbiotes require oxygen-breathing hosts to survive, and that unless they are compatible, such as in the case of organ transplants, the hosts will frequently fatally reject the symbiosis. Drake wanted one of his scientists, Dora Skirth, to begin human trials, but she felt it was too soon. When Skirth denies it, Drake forces and blackmails Dr. Dora Skirth to proceed with human trials without further research. 6 months later, Eddie lives a miserable life, losing his job, home, and woman. Eddie purchases his convenience store goods from Mrs. Chen. Eddie has no choice but to hide when the store is broken by a burglar the same evening when he is inside the store. Mrs. Chen gives Eddie a lot of support. Eddie lives in a small apartment and faces a lot of job rejections from the most of the companies. He has also been troubled by his unfriendly neighbor. Drake thinks he is getting closer to establishing a fruitful relationship with humans. Skirth knew a perfect match between the host and the symbiote was required for the symbiosis. Several people would have to die before an ideal human match for the symbiotes could be found because the host dies if the game is imperfect. According to Drake's conjectures, humans can survive in space just like the symbiotes, provided they can create a symbiotic relationship with the extraterrestrial life form. Drake wants to know how likely it is that test subjects who are human will survive the next test while carrying the symbiote. He brings a volunteer and does his first human trials, leading to the volunteer's death after the symbiote got in his body. Without any hesitation, Drake calls for the next volunteer. Skirth approaches Brock. She wants to help Eddie expose Drake because she disagrees with his techniques, which involve selecting random people and killing them for experiments. Skirth says she is terrified for her family and her life, So she won't go to the police straight. Eddie is informed by the Kurth that the alien life form that Drake's space probe brought back to Earth has returned. Eddie hesitantly visits Annie's house to meet her. Simultaneously, she arrives home and introduces her new boyfriend, Dr. Dan Lewis, which makes Eddie miserable. As Eddie approaches Kurth, they break into the research center to pursue evidence and click pictures. Eddie discovers that one of Drake's test subjects is an acquaintance of his, a homeless lady named Maria. He breaks the glass to release Maria. When Maria attacks Eddie in an attempt to free her, the symbiote inside of her shifts from her body to his and killing her. Eddie uses his superhuman strength, speed, and agility to escape, but he quickly exhibits weird symptoms such as overwhelming hunger and eating meat from dumpster. He is electrified to see some other monster in the mirror. He soon reaches out to Annie for assistance and acts weird eating raw meat. Dr. Dan Lewis, her new partner, checks Eddie and finds the symbiote. Drake's researchers have found that sounds in the 4,000 to 6,000 Hz range are very harmful to the symbiotes. Eddie starts hearing voices in his brain. Drake also forces Kurth to divulge the identity of the person she brought into the facility. As the result, Eddie's symbiote is the only known specimen that has survived. In an attempt to get the symbiote off Eddie, Drake dispatches mercenaries, but the entity that surrounds Eddie and repels the attack is the symbiote. In addition, Eddie is actively shielded from gunshots and other potentially fatal circumstances by the symbiote from his assailants. During the fight, Eddie's fractured bones and injuries were healed immediately by Venom, the symbiote. The symbiote confronts Eddie while hiding outside the city and identifies itself as Venom. According to the explanation, the comet is an invading force looking for new planets where the symbiotes may take control of and eat the local population. When Eddie assists the symbiotes in achieving their objective, Venom promises to spare him, and Eddie quickly grows accustomed to the superhuman abilities that symbiote bestows upon him. In an attempt to provide evidence of Drake's crimes, Eddie breaks into his former place of employment. However, when he leaves, he is confronted by SWAT cops and changes once more to making his getaway. After observing his change, Annie takes Eddie to Louis' hospital. In the meantime, Riot, the fourth symbiote, travels by body hopping from Malaysia to San Francisco. Riot forms a link with Drake at Louis' hospital, where they inform him that the symbiote is gradually destroying his internal organs. In addition, Eddie acknowledges that the symbiote is vulnerable to fire and high-pitched noises, and uses an MRI machine to weaken the symbiote long enough for Eddie to break free from it, despite the symbiote's claims that the organ damage is a fixable aspect of their symbiosis. After Eddie gets out of the room, Venom sneakily body hops into a dog and watches Eddie. Drake's men then apprehend Eddie. Annie recognizes Venom inside the dog. Eddie refuses to tell Drake Riot where Venom is. Drake orders his men to kill Eddie. Drake consents to transport Riot aboard a Life Foundation spacecraft to gather the other symbiotes and deliver them to Earth. Annie begrudgingly becomes friends with Venom to set Eddie up. After reuniting with Eddie, Venom claims that their interactions have persuaded him to assist in defending Earth against his kind. So, Eddie Venom heads to stop Drake Riot. Venom confronts that they need to stop Riot because he is going to take a rocket and bring millions of his kind, which means symbiotes, with an invasion force to Earth to feed on humans. Venom previously had an idea, but it turned different, and it decided to stay on Earth because Venom was kind of a loser on his planet, but here together with Eddie, they could be more, it believed. Also, it started liking Eddie now, so they should stop the rocket and save humans before getting destroyed. Venom, Eddie confronts Riot Drake and refuses to get inside the rocket, and that's how the war begins between the two monsters. With Annie's assistance, the two make an effort to halt Riot and Venom. Drake returns to Riot and stabs Eddie when he is out of Venom. At Eddie's last breath, Venom finds him and gets inside Eddie. He cures Eddie and together they damage the rocket. Riot and Drake are killed when the probe explodes due to damage caused by Venom while it is in the air. Annie thinks that after this, Eddie and Venom are no longer linked and that the symbiote perished in the explosion as well. Nevertheless, the two maintain their covert friendship and make a deal with Venom eliminates only the criminals by eating their heads to defend the city. When Eddie returns to Mrs. Chen's store, Venom Eddie spots the same man who broke into her business. Instead of doing nothing, they eat him in front of Mrs. Chen, who learns about Venom in Eddie. Brock, who has returned to journalism, is asked to interview Cletus Cassidy, a convicted serial killer who has threatened to carry out carnage if and when he breaks free.